Let's start again. Hello. Today I'm going to make a video titled How I Got Into Modular Synthesis. Not my usual type of video because I'm holding a guitar. And the reason I'm holding this guitar is because I just feel a little bit more comfortable talking if I'm holding a guitar. And that's it. There's no other reason. So I have recently been pondering, though, reasons why people, humans, maybe not reasons why, but how people get into modular synthesis. And so I thought I would share my own journey, so to speak, for how I got into modular synthesis, and then maybe invite some of you, anybody who watches this video, to share in the comments how you got into modular synthesis. And the reason that I've been wondering this is because it's a fairly unusual way of making music. If you randomly bump into a person on the street and tell them that you're a musician and that you make music, they probably imagine that you play the guitar or the drums or the bass or a keyboard, or maybe you play in an orchestra or play an orchestral instrument. But they probably don't imagine that you play a modular synthesizer. In fact, they probably don't even know what a modular synthesizer is. And it's my assumption that most people get into modular synthesis at a point when they're already musical. They're already musicians. They're already fairly competent. Because it's not like as a an 8-year-old child at primary school or whatever the equivalent is in your country, that you have the opportunity to take modular synth lessons, whereas probably most primary schools or schools for young children probably do have some sort of music lessons where you can learn to play a wind instrument or a brass instrument or maybe the guitar or the drums or something like that, and you have a music lesson once a week with a teacher. There's no opportunity really for electronic music in those sorts of situations. So how do people come to electronic music and specifically modular synthesis? That's the question that I am interested in finding out. And hopefully people will respond to this video and tell me in the comments. Otherwise it's going to be it'll be a little bit embarrassing, won't it? Because the comments will just be empty and, well, I'll probably just feel a bit sad. Anyway, so without further ado, here is my story of how I got into modular synthesis. And I don't know actually whether I ever have made a video about this before, but I don't do many talking videos. I think I've probably only done like one talking video, so this is now the time for me to talk about how I got into modular synthesis. So, why am I holding this guitar? I'm holding this guitar because I am a guitar player. I played guitar since I was 14. And I'm 44 now, so that's a lot of years, isn't it? Oh dear. I play guitar. I play electric guitar and classical guitar, and for a significant portion of my life I have earned my living from playing guitar and teaching other people to play guitar. That has been how I've paid my bills and my mortgage. I'm now a music lecturer in a college, post-16 college, where I teach further and higher education. But the guitar is my main instrument and always has been, I guess always will be. And 4 years ago, if you'd stopped me on the street and asked me what a modular synthesizer was, I would not have been able to tell you, because I didn't know that such things existed. I might have heard the word, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you what it was or is. So, how did I get into modular synthesis then? And, well, we have to go back in time a little bit to pre-COVID. So 2019, maybe 2018, I don't know. Before COVID, I was in a band called Mesotonic. Check them out. Spotify, they're on YouTube as well. Mesotonic, Mezottonic. Mesotonic. I was in a band called Mesotonic, and we were a funk band. I played guitar. So kind of like, I don't know, sort of Jamiroquai, Chili Peppers, James Brown, kind of Incubus as well, a little bit heavier. Some of the tracks were. So we played in a funk band. That was all, going well. Prior to that, I played in lots of bands, mainly sort of rock bands and so on. So I was in this funk band. We got lots of gigs lined up. We were doing recording an EP. Lots of festival dates lined up for the coming summer. And then, of course, we went out of 2019 into 2020, March 2020. As we all know, COVID struck, and that was the end of music as we knew it for the foreseeable future. No more gigs, no more rehearsals. So very difficult to do anything. At the same time, I was teaching music in college. All the teaching went online, as best we could. So during that period, I kind of really knuckled down with practicing guitar, because there wasn't really anything else to do. And that's kind of what I focused on with a lot of the students as well. We sort of run these guitar boot camps, you could almost call it, every single day. First thing in the morning, we'd start off with an hour of sort of training, going through improvising scales, exercises, all sorts of things, all together online. And I was creating some backing tracks for those classes for people to improvise to. And then I sort of decided I dabbled a little bit with YouTube, but I hadn't really done an awful lot. So I decided that I would set myself a challenge. I don't think I was going to do it on YouTube to start with. I was going to do it on Instagram, but then it ended up going on to YouTube. I set myself a challenge to record a 1-minute video every single day for 30 days, where I would improvise for a minute. A different scale, different backing track every single day. So I started doing that. I think I did like the first one or two just on my phone, and then very quickly I decided, I'm going to do this properly. I'm going to get the camera out and put it on YouTube, and I'm going to make a YouTube video every single day for 30 days with an improvisation. It was only meant to be a minute long, but it after a few days, they're probably like 5 or 10 minutes long maybe. And I was making these backing tracks to improvise to. And at some point, whilst doing some research to create a particular backing track, I came across the idea of generative music, and in particular Brian Eno. So no doubt many of you will be familiar with Brian Eno and his ambient music and generative music, and in particular music for airports, which I think is obviously a key album in the ambient generative field of music. So I came across this idea of generative music, and I started trying to create some generative tracks myself using some of the techniques that Brian Eno used on those early albums with tape players. But instead of using tape players, I was using MIDI playing in little MIDI parts and notes, and then looping them with different lengths to sort of create generative tracks. If you're not familiar with that technique, it is a really interesting technique, and I would urge you to look into that and do a bit of research around Brian Eno's generative music, their music for airports and so on. Maybe that's a subject for another video. Anyway, I started doing that in order to create backing tracks for the guitar. As I started doing more research into generative music, that is when I first really came across modular synthesis, and of course modular synthesizers, modular synths, however you want to call them. Great machines for generative music, and there are so many great generative patches on the YouTube. Just type in Modular Synth, eurorack generative music, and you'll find so many. Very quickly, when researching generative music, I came across modular synthesis, and I thought, this is interesting. So my first sort of introduction, my gateway drug, if you will, was VCV Rack, which you may be familiar with. If you're not, and you're interested in getting into modular synthesis, that is a really great platform to use. VCV Rack is free. There is a paid version, but there's a free version as well. And it's a great way of having a virtual modular synth on your computer. So I used that first, and I studied loads of videos, basically where, the sort of videos where somebody's building a patch from nothing, and they build it up. And so I'd basically follow it, just keep pausing the video, patch the same thing, unpause, watch a bit more, pause, patch the next bit, and so on, until I could build up a replica of the patch that was on the video. Basically just copying that person's patch, because I had no idea really how the modular synth works, or even synthesis in general. I didn't really have any idea what synthesis was, what an oscillator was, or an LFO, or anything like that. So I was literally just copying patches, not really knowing. Oh, it's an ambulance, fire engine, something. Yeah, so I was just copying patches, not really knowing how or why they worked, but then slowly over time you did start to understand a little bit about how some of these things worked, and what the modules did, and different types of modules that there were. And then instead of just copying the patch, I would make changes to them and sort of evolve them a little bit, and try and make my own version, or do something. And then slowly, eventually I would start making my own patches from scratch. And to start with, it very much was in order to make backing tracks to play the guitar to. But very quickly, I discovered that it was a great medium for just making music outright anyway, without the guitar even. And very different type of music to anything that I had come across before. Coming from a background of playing guitar in a band where you have songs with verses and choruses and lyrics and all the rest of it, creating music with a modular synth, especially generative music. I didn't always do generative music or create generative patches, but a lot of the time I would. That was a completely different type of music than the type of music that I was used to, and in many ways, it's a very liberating type of music, because it's sort of you're kind of free to express yourself in any way, and not really be that concerned about sticking to all the conventions of popular music, and just create interesting soundscapes or patches or noises or whatever. So during that first year, 2020, maybe sometime in the summer, I think I got together a number of tracks which I released as an album, and my first ever album of music that I made myself. You know, and when I say released, I put it through DistroKid, and then it's on Spotify and all the rest of it, and probably, you know, about 10 people have listened to it or something like that. But you know, it was quite a milestone, or a major step for me in terms of actually just making music myself and releasing it. And then I started regularly putting these videos on YouTube of me playing modular synth. And, you know, here we are some time later, and I'm still doing it, still making videos and still exploring modular synth. Still playing guitar, still teaching guitar, but not so much with the modular synth. So yeah, so that's how I got into modular synth. Through the guitar, really, I suppose you could say. And yeah, that's kind of my story. So what I'm kind of interested in is, how did you get into modular synth? Were you always into electronic music? Because I wasn't. I was, you know, I was into funk and jazz and maybe even a little bit of metal and rock and, you know, anything that was guitar based. Really, I definitely wasn't into electronic music. So, how did you get into modular synth, and what was your journey? I'd really be interested to find out, because I think people's journeys into modular synth are quite often unique and probably have a few twists and turns along the way. So I think it'd be really interesting if a few people would share their journey in the comments below. That'd be really great, and just kind of satisfy my curiosity more than anything. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. I am going to try and make a few more of these sort of talking videos. I'm not sure that I'll always be wearing this hat. In fact, I don't really know why I am wearing this hat. It was there and it was in the way, and I needed to move it. And I'll put it on my head. Anyway, I'll say goodbye for now. Cheerio.